Hello everyone and welcome back to JB Soul Gaming, Best Games of 2016, the best darn award show there is, maybe. And we're going to jump right back into the awards because this is the best darn award show and we're going to get right to it. Now this category is going to be really interesting and one I'm super excited about. This is the Indie Game of the Year category, and what qualifies that in my category? Basically a game that's under $60 that some people only into AAA games might not have heard about. There's a ton of nominees in this category and these are all games that if you haven't heard about, you might want to check out. So let's go ahead and get into it right away, and let's talk about Inside. You may have heard about Limbo a few years ago. This is the same studio that did Limbo, and I personally feel like this is an improvement on Limbo. It is kind of a puzzle platformer game, maybe a little bit slow paced, kind of a creepy, dreary art style. And here's the deal: not everyone loved this game. A lot of people didn't like where the story went, but personally, I feel like graphically, sound design, this game is great, and I love the story. It is kind of a unique storytelling, kind of a show don't tell, and some people thought it was silly. I thought it was fantastic, but I will point out a lot of people thought the story was a little too existential, a little too silly. But if you're interested in a dreary puzzle platformer, check out this game. I think you might like it. So in a much lighter tone, let's talk about Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is a really interesting game. Basically, you're given this farm and said, go for it. You can try to have relationships with people. You can try to grow crops. You can try to, breed animals. You can try to go off and adventures. You can do fishing. You can do all these different things, and you can take it as a real chill game, or you can try to min-max everything, plan out all your days, try to get the right things for the right people. And this is a game that a lot of YouTubers went into. They heard about it and they were like, I don't know about this, and people fell in love with. And to be honest, it isn't really my sort of game. I don't really love this game, but a lot of people that I respect their opinions love this game. A lot of people thought this was one of the best games of the year, and I've got to mention it because this is a consumer-friendly channel, and if this is the sort of game that looks interesting to you, then it's a game that you definitely want to check out. Now, if you like roguelike games, then this is a game you might want to check out. Enter the Gungeon. So Enter the Gungeon isn't perfect. I feel like it has some issues. I feel like the weapons and ammunition system doesn't work as well as maybe some of the synergies and things like that in games like Binding of Isaac, but I think this game looks better than Binding of Isaac. I think it has great sound design and music to the game, and it is a really fun game. The truth is, these games were just too hard for me. I played this game, I didn't get too far into it, and I eventually got frustrated, not because the game is bad, but just because I don't really have the time to devote to get good at this game. But if you like those roguelike games, randomly generated levels where you go in and you try to get a little bit farther every time, but as soon as you die, that's over and you have to start a new run. But you do get a degree of progression as you unlock more things as the game goes on, and it's very gun focused, not so much item focused. Everything in the game is pretty much a pun of a gun, but it's a game that I really did enjoy, even if it's one that I just don't have the time for. So we're going to go through some lighthearted games to a little bit of a darker game, a lot of a dark game, but not dark in the way you normally think of it. Dark as in realistic. That Dragon Cancer. I feel like this game deserves nominated, not necessarily because it is the greatest gameplay of any game out there. If you haven't heard about this game, it is a game that the father of a child who died of cancer wrote this game, designed this game, put it out there more as an experience to try to relate to people the experience of this individual, of his wife, of their other child. And it's a game that obviously it isn't for everyone. It obviously isn't necessarily a game in the traditional sense. It is more of an experience. But I feel like the heart and soul and the passion that went into this project means it should be at least mentioned in this category if you haven't heard about it yet. And if that is something that interests you, and again, it isn't for everybody, I do think as a game it maybe doesn't work all that well, but as an experience, if that is something you're interested in, is really something to check out. Now, something else we're going to check out here is Icy. So Icy is a action game at first glance, but it also wears on its sleeve. It also has a bit of a metagame going on. If you haven't heard of the Stanley Parable, it is my favorite walking simulator of all time, and a game where you travel around and there's a narrator talking, and you're not playing as much as experiencing it, although it has more interaction than some other walking simulators. This game is an action game, and a pretty good action game, but it also has some other levels going on, and it's a game that I honestly think is awesome. A really interesting game, a recent game, and one that I think might be worth checking out. And again, at a fairly small price point. So another game, Super Hot. So this is another kind of meta game where there's a bigger story going on kind of behind the scenes. And this is one that a lot of people didn't really all that well receive the meta game of the game, kind of the story going on behind the scenes. However, almost everybody loved the gameplay of this game, and apparently it just came out in VR and is fantastic in virtual reality as well. This is a game that only moves when you move. So while it may look like a first-person shooter at first glance, and this footage playing right now maybe doesn't necessarily give you the best impression of the game, it's actually very stop and start. It's pay attention to what's going on in your environment, and choose when to move, because you can see what's going on, and things move incredibly slowly when you're not moving. So you can kind of figure out the puzzle of the level, do amazing things, slice bullets in half, throw something at someone, catch your gun in midair, use it to shoot someone, throw it at someone else. A really interesting kind of puzzle game, whether or not you enjoyed the metagame of it. So next we're going to talk about Owlboy. So Owlboy is kind of a throwback game using pixel graphics, but pixel graphics done well. Kind of an action platformer, a little bit of puzzles and things like that. This game was compared a little bit to Shovel Knight, a game from not that long ago that received pretty much universal praise. And in general, I haven't seen this game receive quite as much praise. There have been a few people who didn't really enjoy this game, but still, overall, this is a game that looks gorgeous, and many people feel like it plays pretty well. It may be a little bit too simple early on or whatever, but overall a gorgeous game. And if you're interested in kind of that throwback action platformer with some puzzles, this is a game you might definitely want to check out. So next we have Planet Coaster. So Planet Coaster is a throwback to like Roller Coaster Tycoon and that sort of series. This is a game I've played a lot of. I adore this game. It has issues. When you get a really big park, it has frame rate issues. Some people have complained that it's too easy to make money. The modes are labeled kind of poorly. There is a mode that you can just do whatever you want. Creative, you have unlimited money. There is a mode where you have goals. You do have limited money. And then as you complete goals, you get more money. And there are like scenarios that you can play. Overall, though, even though this game has some issues, the frame rate really drops down when you have a bunch of stuff in the environment. The customization in this game, the amount of things that you can build if you choose to get into that, the Steam Workshop support of people building other things you can bring into the game, the interaction of being able to look at what every person in your park is thinking, they each individually act, it's amazing. But that amazing level of customization and all those things going on also can slow down the game. They are working on patching it, trying to make it work a little bit better. So if you can deal with the performance issues as your park gets bigger, I feel like this may be the best Roller Coaster Tycoon style game there is. Next, I want to talk about The Witness. So this is from Jonathan Blow, the creator of Braid, one of my favorite games of all time. This is a game that really didn't interest me that much because it's mostly what you see here, line puzzles. There is a bigger game going on in that. It is a gorgeous game. I love the art design in this game. And it is a big, deep game that some people love and some people hate. I feel like it's at least deserving of mention because there are people who feel like this is definitely one of the games of the year, and there's people who hated it. But if the concept of figuring out these line puzzles that almost provide a language for you in order to understand other puzzles, and some things I don't want to spoil, but like bigger things going on and trying to uncover the puzzle of the individual puzzles and the puzzle of the game as a whole, then this is a game that may be right for you. SteamWorld Heist is a game that I did a video on. I adore this game. So this is another kind of simplified turn-based game where you're going around and each character basically has two actions, much like XCOM, but it's in a two-dimensional plane. I love the setting of the game. I love the music and the sound of the game. I love the feel of this game. It's just a really cool world. It is a relatively simple turn-based things, but one of the cool catches of the game is that you aim all of your shots, unlike XCOM where you roll a die. Now, a lot of the footage in here is showing like an arrow that's showing you where your shot is going to go. Only certain types of weapons have that ability, that have scopes on it. Basically, other weapons you can do cool things with and try to bounce off. But it's a really fun game that I adore. And this actually came close to my indie game of the year, believe it or not. Like I said, I did a video on it. You can check it out if you want to see more. But my indie game of the year actually goes to Darkest Dungeon. So this game, you want to talk about randomness like XCOM. You want to talk about hard and characters dying. Darkest Dungeon offers that, and it offers an experience that may make you just flip out. You can see people losing their minds. Ezekiel the Third, I believe, is a Twitch streamer, has a famous video of just losing his mind when something happened in this game, a total party kill. It can set you back, but at the same time, this is one of his favorite games of the year. And to me, this may be the best indie game of the year. And again, all of these games, depending on what you're interested in, may be the indie game of the year for you, but I feel like this game offers really in-depth turn-based combat, a great art style, and if you're okay with that randomness and at the same time learning things about the game, maybe you can make certain things safer or whatever by doing certain things, then there's a lot of depth in this game, and the depth, the complexity, and at the same time the base level just enjoyment of that turn-based Lovecraftian sort of feel of a game, which is a theme that I tend to enjoy quite a bit. I do feel like this is an awesome game, but not for everybody. If you're not okay with randomness, if you're not okay with your party dying and being set back, stay away from this game. But for me, and from what I've seen from the community out there, this is my indie game of the year for 2016. Alright, next up we're going to talk about the best role-playing game of 2016, and this is one of those quick awards I'm going to do. The reason I'm going to do that is there's quite a few of the action-adventure category that I'm going to make a big category that could be role-playing games. For me, a role-playing game means old-school role-playing, and if you like old-school role-playing, Baldur's Gate, games like that, then for me, the best role-playing game of 2016 was Tyranny. I did several playthrough videos of this game. You can go check that out on my channel. And there were a lot of good role-playing games this year. There were a lot of games that kind of throw back to that old style aesthetic. And then there were newer style role-playing games that some of those will be in the action-adventure games. But for me, the tactical combat, the depth of creating characters and leveling up characters and all that is really great in Tyranny. Not only gameplay-wise, but also in story. In this game, basically, you play the bad guys, and it's this huge game that I personally found the story more interesting than other games that have come out that have kind of rebooted this old school style of genre. There are a lot of great games out there. Divinity Original Sin, which has sometimes a little bit of a sillier feel to it. There's a lot of choices out there in this resurgent, but my favorite role-playing game, pure role-playing game of 2016 was Tyranny. Go check out my other videos if you want to. I love this game. It's a huge game, and if you enjoy those 90s style role-playing games, then I highly recommend it. I feel like that twist of kind of playing the bad guys, if you will, or otherly good, as I like to say, then this is a game that will definitely appeal to you. Alright, last but not least, we have the action-adventure category. And you might say, what about games like fighting games or sports games or racing games? Well, I don't play enough of those games to feel like I should be able to give out those awards. Even though I do follow a lot of people that play a lot of those games, I listen to them, I don't feel ready to do that. I will mention two games real quick in the racing genre. Forza Horizon 3, I've heard fantastic things about, kind of an open-world racing game that's actually done right. And also Redout, kind of a throwback game to some of the older style F-Zero, Wipeout style games like that. I've heard both of those are pretty fantastic. So I will mention those games as honorable mention in racing, but all of those other genres, I've heard Street Fighter V, although it had a terrible launch, is also a pretty solid fighting game as far as letting new players come into the game, but also still have depth. So I'll throw those out as honorable mentions in those categories, and I don't play sports games at all, so let's just not talk about that. So let's move on to Action Adventure, our last big category before we talk about Game of the Year. And first, obviously, is Uncharted 4 Drake's Fortune, or Thief's End. Drake's Fortune was one before. Anyways, Uncharted 4. So this is a game that took some of its gameplay, or not gameplay, cutscenes a little bit more seriously. Drake has grown up a little bit, and this is a game that I feel like Drake is kind of an odd character. He kills a lot of people, and I don't know if he's necessarily a good guy, even though he tries to appear that way in the cutscenes. I feel like this is a more grounded Drake. I feel like this has solid gameplay as far as the puzzling and the platforming and all that, like the other games, but it still has kind of bad shooting mechanisms like the other games. So that's why this game didn't win. But overall, really high production values, good story, good cutscenes, good voice acting, and all of that. So it's definitely nominated, but not the game of the year. So next up, we're going to talk about Deus Ex Mankind Divided. So we're going to have two games in here that are sequels that were really good, but also somewhat disappointing. So Deus Ex Mankind Divided, a lot of people love the gameplay of this. I did hear one review in particular by Alice Bell, who didn't really like the gameplay of this, but overall most people tended to enjoy the gameplay of this game, but were somewhat disappointed by, and no spoilers, but by the abrupt ending of the story. There's rumors about maybe the game being cut up or whatnot. There are some odd things with microtransactions. You can buy Praxis points, which help build your character. A single player game, which some people don't have a problem with, some people do. But anyways, this game had a lot of issues. Pre-order faux pas, comparing the augmented thing in this society to kind of Black Lives Matter in our society. Just a lot of weird things, and a heavily focus on this augmented people being outcast in society is kind of the premise of this game. I don't know how well all of it worked, but overall, the original reboot of Deus Ex was fantastic. The original Deus Ex was a fantastic game. The reboot of it was a fantastic game. And this game has a lot of that same gameplay, some improvements as well. And even if you don't like all the decisions that the game made, it is still a pretty solid game, if weak in a few spots. Which can also be said about Dishonored 2. Now, this is a game that, again, had a lot of positive reviews, but some mixed reviews. ACG is another fantastic channel. I suggest checking that out. Used to be Angry Centaur Gaming, but a lot of people, the angry thing, whatever. So it's just ACG now, great channel. And he's the one I saw pointed out the overpowered kind of slide tackle move or whatever in the game, which is surprising. But this game, again, has some issues with story. It has kind of again, no spoilers, but stupid introduction that only kind of makes sense if you played the expansion to the first game, and even then is still kind of cheesy. But there are two characters that you can play as, and still, again, good gameplay like in the first game that I also love. So overall, gets a nomination, but can't win. Another reboot, Hitman. So Hitman, again, issues, episodic release. Some people were okay with that, some people didn't really like that, but overall, most people agree this is a good reboot to the Hitman series. There were some fantastic levels and a lot of fun to be had in Hitman. If you enjoy that style of gameplay where you can go in and you want to replay missions over and over again, you want to do these escalation missions where you're trying to do more complicated things, then that's great. You might really enjoy this game. But if you enjoy just going through a game once and not replaying stuff to try to do things differently, or try to do more complicated missions, then stay away from this game. Yet another sequel that was really solid and yet had some issues, Watch Dogs 2. So Watch Dogs 2 really took the stuff in the first game that people hated. Aiden, I believe his name was. He was an awful protagonist. His mission to kill all these people didn't even really make all that much sense. And there was obviously the controversies of it not matching up with the preview gameplay and footage and whatnot. This is a game where they changed the tone of the game. They made it silly. Some people love the characters in this game and the dialogue and love how kind of silly they turned it. Some people think it's cringeworthy, is a word I've heard a lot. Overall, I enjoy what they did with this game. I think that they changed around the tone of the game. They did that fantastically. It has better gameplay than the original. And honestly, this game takes a knock because, well, you can 3D print guns in the game and whatever, and the gameplay, I feel like, and a lot of people feel like, works really well when you're doing either playing a stealth game or using your hacking to, get through different sections and maybe being willing to kill people, not just going through into gunplay. But much like Uncharted, it suffers in kind of the gunplay, and it also doesn't kind of match with the tone of the game that is kind of silly. So there's kind of some ludonarrative dissonance or whatever, or maybe that's not even the right term, but it just doesn't quite work as well when you're just shooting everybody. So a good solid game, a good reboot that improved on the original, and much like Titanfall 2, though, didn't get a lot of sales because, well, people were disappointed by the original. The last nominee, before we get to the Game of the Year category, and the winner of this category is Final Fantasy 15. This is a game that, again, has some issues. I'll just say Chapter 13. there are some problems. You almost don't need to see, but it helps to see the movie Kingsglaive before you play this game to know completely what's going on. The end of the game just is disjointed and funky. It's almost like the game was developed up to a certain point, and then at the end because the game had already been delayed, they had to rush out the ending, and the story kind of just stops making sense at one point. There's some weird product placement and some things in it, but overall this is a game that some people may be offended by because they went away from the turn-based combat. For the most part though, people enjoy the real-time combat in this game. For the most part, people enjoy kind of the vibe of this game set in kind of like a modern world setting, but still Final Fantasy. And although the driving and some other aspects may not be really enjoyed in general, this is a huge game with a lot to offer. What I think is a really interesting real-time combat system that may seem really simple at first, but actually has some depth. And personally, to me, even though I said before how I really liked the tactical combat in old school role-playing games, I didn't really like the turn-based combat in JRPGs. And this is a game that I feel like has a really good combat system if you're okay with them getting away from the turn-based combat system. Has a pretty good story up until a point where you're at least interested in the characters, and the characters kind of grow on you, and then it gets a little bit weird, but overall a really big, really solid effort. So now we go to our winner of the action-adventure game, Dark Souls 3. So this is a series that, again, may be a little too tough for me. I'm that person, and you can go ahead and leave all the dislikes you want, or the likes you want if you enjoyed this video, that I feel like Dark Souls should have an easy mode, but that's just me. We're not going to get into that debate. That's a whole different debate. But Dark Souls 3 is a game that brings in... I feel like, and it's probably going to be the last official Dark Souls game, even if they do somewhat similar things in the future. They may not, who knows. But it's a fitting conclusion to the Dark Souls series. It has a lot of things people loved about the other games. At the same time, there brings in a little bit more of the aggressive, fast-paced combat of Bloodborne, a game kind of in the series, but kind of not, and overall just really well done. Maybe not as great a level design as the original game, as far as the way things interloop with each other, but still really good level design, boss design, a really cool, again, Lovecraftian, sort of eldritch sort of world going on that you can get as much into as you want to, or just ignore and get into the gameplay, however you want to do it. But overall, just this was another really solid game in the franchise, and if you're cool with a really, really hard combat that's going to kill you a lot that you want to progress in, great. And if you're not, maybe check out one of the other games. But that is my action-adventure game of 2016. Alright everyone, we've made it to the Game of the Year category, and here I want to say this is my personal choice. So we'll get to it eventually, but basically, all these other things I've tried to incorporate all the different opinions of people I've respect and listen to, and try to bring that in. But this is for me my Game of the Year. And the nominees, we only have 4, and 3 of them are winners from other categories. So we have Dark Souls 3. I've talked about it. I think it is a fantastic game. I think it iterates on the series very well, but I feel like it doesn't quite innovate enough in order to be the Game of the Year. So next we have Darkest Dungeon, a game that I think is fantastic. And if you're into that kind of Lovecraftian, almost hopeless vibe, if you're okay with the RNG, it is a great indie game and definitely worth checking out. But maybe there just isn't quite enough for me personally to consider it my Game of the Year. I can get frustrated with that and maybe not want to go back to it at some points based on the RNG just being so ridiculous. So that's why this one, while it's nominated, it can't quite be my Game of the Year. Next we have Civilization 6. I heart this game. I love this game. It is fantastic. I think it's the best version of Civ so far, and in another year, that might actually make it my Game of the Year. But there's one game that I keep going back to, and I'm almost disappointed to say it's my Game of the Year, but if you watch the channel, you know I've covered this game multiple times because I love it. And I want to point out, I like other games in this genre quite a bit, but my Game of the Year, I'm sorry, it has to be Overwatch. I liked Paladins. I covered it. I liked Battleborn. I did a comparison of Battleborn and Overwatch before they came out, and I said there's a lot of things about Battleborn I think is great, and it's too bad that Battleborn didn't get the chance that I feel like it deserved. Battleborn is a great game, but Overwatch is a game that I still play a lot when I get an opportunity to play. I still keep going back to this game, and I feel like it is the epitome of the hero shooter genre. And the thing is, I don't feel like these other games are clones of Overwatch. I think they're good games. But like I said in my video where I talked about comparing this to Battleborn, and I said both games are really great games, at the end of the day, I just have the most fun playing this game. And for me, playing games is about having fun. Yes, you can have different experiences that aren't quite about having fun in the same way, like the Stanley Parable, interesting games like that, like Braid, like that Dragon Cancer. And I want to talk about those games and bring those games to light for those of you who haven't heard about them. But when it comes to having fun, I haven't had more fun this year than with Overwatch. It is a game that is relatively simple as far as the heroes not having a ton of abilities, but there is still interesting decisions about which heroes you can play. Switching heroes brings a strategy to the game, and it's a game that I play at a casual level that admittedly my 11-year-old son is now better than me at. He does play it a lot more than I do, but it is a game that for both of us is just fun. We talk about, and again, fun is king for me, and Overwatch is just a fun game, and that is why it is my game of the year for 2016. Thanks a lot for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy, like. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing if you haven't, and maybe consider sharing if you enjoyed this video series. Maybe the best video game awards of 2016, maybe not, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I tried to get right to the point and talk about why these games are games that I enjoyed and you might enjoy too. Try to be as consumer friendly as possible, and that's what I'll continue to do on this channel. So continue checking it out, continue letting other people know about it, and maybe we'll get to the point where I actually make $1 on the channel, but maybe not, because at the end of the day, I love playing games, I have fun playing games, and that's why Overwatch is my game of the year. Thanks a lot for watching, and we will talk to you again soon.